So what's going on guys, Kades here and welcome back to a brand new video. For today we are checking out Squad and we will see if this game is worth playing in 2023. So it's been almost 1 year since I made my first video and played Squad, and now I have more than 1000 hours into this game. So at the beginning of the video I will give you a short but in-depth look into this game. Then we will go over all the factions, game modes and different vehicles. How realistic is this game to real life combat, then how does the different class system works and much more. So if this sounds interesting to you, then let's get right into it. So Squad is a 50 vs 50 online FPS shooter that aims to capture realistic combat by using communication and teamwork. The main idea behind this game is very simple. Imagine being able to play the main character of a war movie and actually experience a war or a battle that we see in the 21st century movies. But in this 100-player battleground, every single player is the main character. So it's up to you and the other players to work together by using in-game mechanics to defeat the enemy team. I assume that almost every single player has once in their life played Call of Duty or Battlefield. But those games offer a quick 10 to 15 minute matches, with 20 to 30 eliminations per game. But Squad takes this realistic aspect and goes to a whole different level. Every single player has the same HP, so most of the time you can eliminate any player with just one shot, if it's a headshot, or as well it can take 2 shots. Which in that case scenario means that you shot the enemy in a leg or shoulder, which is not that important body part. And if you get shot once and survive, then a new mechanic called bleeding comes into play. So if you get shot, then you start bleeding, and you have few seconds to bandage yourself up and stop the bleeding or ask for a medic. While we're talking about medics, the medic is one of the 12 classes aka kits that a player can select. So at the beginning of every match, every single player has to equip what role you want to play. So imagine a default class system, and depending on which one you pick, you will get different weapons, rocket launchers, the ability to use vehicles or tanks. Then there are even classes that can place mines, build simple structures and much more. So for example, let's take a look at the medic. So if you pick this class, then you will get a rifle, smokes and most importantly, a bandage and bunch of other healing items. And where a normal player can use a bandage to stop his or his teammates bleeding in about 9 seconds, then the medic can use the same bandage but heal him in twice as fast time. But then on the other hand, if you pick a sniper class, then you will get a sniper rifle, binoculars and much more. Bandages, ammo and other utilities that you can use are not infinite. So that means that some players are tasked to resupply your team's bases, while others will try to outflank the enemies or perhaps try to hold a high ground and etc. This is one of those systems that where squad and real life combat comes into play. So every team is split into 50 players. For those 50 players, there are smaller squads, which usually consists of 8 players. Before each match, players can create their own squads of 8 players, or join the other players' squads. And then furthermore, if the squad leader chooses, he can split his 8-player squad into 3 smaller groups, called Alpha, Bravo and Charlie. And that will mean that instead of saying a player's name and then ordering what to do, the squad leader can say just Bravo please go to my attack mark, and then all the players who are assigned into the Bravo team know what to do. And then lastly, each one of these 3 small groups get their own group leader, which can mark icons on the map. So this is another good segue into how the map system works. Unlike in Call of Duty or Battlefield, when a player gets eliminated, he can click respawn, and then you will be able to randomly teleport across the map. But in Squad at the start of the game, all players will spawn into their starting points, which are called the main base. And then from here, they can use vehicles called lodges. And by driving these vehicles to where you want, you can place fobs and rally points to give your teammates other places to spawn. As I've mentioned, ammo and buildings are not infinite, so squad leaders may assign their teammates to drive the vehicle back to the main base, to resupply their ammo and materials, to then bring it back so you could build more respawn points and so other players could get more ammo. Then now let's specifically talk about the map icons. So unlike in Call of Duty where you get the minimap and see the red dots where the enemy shot from, in Squad all you get is this map, and squad leaders and their Bravo and Charlie leaders are the only ones that can mark enemies. So for example, if I see an enemy vehicle on my position, I will mark him as that specific vehicle. Or if I saw an enemy respawn point, or where the enemies might be approximately attacking from, then I will mark all of this. Each player gets to mark 3 icons, and at any time you can delete your marks to mark other positions. This is the biggest way that the different squad leaders and their teams will communicate. So then, while we're talking about the communication, this is the biggest part of the game. Every squad leader gets access to local squad and command voice channels, while normal squad members will get access to local and squad voice channels. So by holding the V key, or depending on whichever you have keybinded on, you will be able to speak in local chat. So that means that all of your teammates will be able to hear you from about 20 to 50 meters. Then if you speak in the squad channel, then no matter the distance, all of your 8 squad members will be able to hear you. And then lastly, if you speak in the command chat, then only the squad leaders will be able to hear you. As I've mentioned, this is the biggest and most fun part about this game. Being able to give commands, communicate, to push together, or ask other teammates for resupplies is the core mechanic that will help you to win against any team. But with that said, this is one of those games that you have to use a microphone 100%. But when I say that you have to use a microphone, it really depends on how much. If you're a squad leader and giving commands, then you might use it all the time. But if you're just normal player, that you might only use it once every 5 to 10 minutes. When you get used to talking in this game, it will become very fun. And unlike in other games where you have to join Discord servers to talk and play together with different players, then in squad, all you have to do is join an 8-player squad and that's it. A month ago, I remembered that I was sick for like 4 or 5 days and I tried playing squad, and the enjoyment without being able to speak was horrible, and I really got bored of the game in just half an hour. So if you want to play this game, then you must, and I really do mean it, you must have and use a mic. Like I said it, if you don't want to, you don't have to speak much, but being able to say things like I copy, or revive me please, or the enemy team is attacking from southwest, are very short dialogues but which will help your teammates, and you will enjoy the back-to-back teamwork a lot more. Okay, so now let's take a look at the gameplay. And to be honest, if I would need to describe the gameplay in squad in just one word, it would be chaos, but in a good way. So what I mean by this is, unlike in movies where you see that the main character shoots the enemies and never dies, then now imagine that all 100 players are the main characters, and none of them want to get eliminated. So this is what we get. A lot of camping, tactical play, outflanking, artillery, and etc. When I just started playing squad, I was really confused and not happy with how the enemy team played. Most of the time I found myself dying from a camper. And this is when I started to understanding the whole game. Every time I had a problem with the game, it wasn't that the game was bad or really badly designed, but I was unhappy with the enemy players and how they played. And this is where the in-game mechanics again come into play. So after playing about 50 plus hours, I started learning that every faction has different weapons, and those weapons make different sounds. So one of the ways I know who and from where the enemy is shooting from is by the sound that the gun makes. After learning all the weapon sounds, I can easily tell if the gun that is shooting is AK-47, M4 rifle, the Canadian rifles, or etc. Then another way to see and predict where the enemies could be is from the map and icons. So each 30 to 60 seconds I open my map to see where the new marks are updated and from where I could expect to see the enemies. Then as well, by just playing the game, you will know all the popular spots where the enemies are more likely to be staying at and much more. Like in real life, getting used to combat and squad will take time and practice, and the first 10 to 20 hours can be frustrating. But always keep in mind that squad is not like any other FPS shooter, and you really have to put yourself in the enemy's shoes and try to predict what would they do, and this is another great mechanic about this game. I could talk a lot more about this game and the different mechanics, but not to make this video too long, I will say one more thing. Friendly fire is enabled as well, so like in real life, after each match you need to see what faction you're fighting for, and each faction will have their unique weapon sounds and uniforms. So the rule of thumb I always do is before shooting, I scope in with my weapon and see if a friendly name tag pops up, or if I am by myself and I hear shots, then I open my map and check if there are no friendly icons around me, and then I know that every player I see is the enemy. Friendly fire is a real thing in squad and in real life, and you can only learn by practicing, so try to get used to different uniforms, and I recommend to always double check before firing. So then moving over to one of the last parts of this video, and it is the vehicles. So in my first squad video I didn't explain much this mechanic, and I still think that for most new players, they should first of all get used to the actual game, and then later when they master the infantry combat, then they can come to the vehicle combat. So vehicles like infantry is another important part in the modern day wars. and every single team in squad may get from 1 to 4 tanks a game, and then from 1 to 4 IFVs, then few Humvees aka light vehicles with a 50 cal and much more. When I was a new player I stayed away from this, but now after hundreds of hours of playtime, this is actually the mechanic I play 90% of the time. So I would say that there are 4 types of vehicles. The first ones are Lodges and Humvees, then the second category are the IFVs, which stand for Infantry Fighting Vehicles, and these are the BTRs, LAVs, ZSLs. Then the third category are the IFV Plus, which means BMPs and Bradleys. And then lastly we have the last 4 category called the MBTs, and they stand for Main Battle Tank. And as the name implies, these are the different faction tanks like Leopards, M1A1 Abrams, T-72s and much more. Each one of these vehicles have weak spots, and to operate one of them you need a special class equipped called the Crewman. And then for each vehicle you need 2 to 3 players to operate them, but usually 2 work just fine. So usually one player is the driver and the second one is the gunner. The driver will be able to usually see in 90 to 120 degree angle, and he as well will be able to see your vehicle's health, which is indicated with this bar, and then by looking at these different icons, you will be able to see each time you get hit, if you get tracked or if your engine is down and etc. And then the gunner has different weapons like the 50 cal, AP, HE rounds, smoke and much more. Each different vehicle has different HP and armor, and like in real life, tanks are the best and can destroy any vehicle, while IFVs, besides using a guided missile, can't destroy a tank. So again, like in real life, each vehicle has to know where to exactly hit the enemy, what ammo to use, because AP rounds, that stand for armor piercing, are the only rounds that can penetrate different vehicles, while the HE rounds, that stand for high explosive, are only used on infantry and much more. If you guys want to see a dedicated video on vehicles, then let me know that in the comment section down below. But like I said, this mechanic is super fun and you can literally learn real life strategy and how different tanks and IFVs work. So if you're a big fan of vehicles and tanks, then in Squad there is basically a new world that you can unlock, but I only recommend it for more experienced players and not in your first 20 to 30 hours. So then moving over to one of the last parts of this video, and it is the section in which I just wanted to cover a few other features that are still important but are not worth discussing a lot in this review. So first of all, unlike in other games, there is no one public matchmaking button, which you can just press and play the game, but in Squad there are servers that other Squad players host, and then any other player can join these servers to play the game. Each server has different map rotations, with different games like Capture the Point, Zone Domination and much more. Oh, and by the way, in Squad there are like 10 to 20 different maps, so you will never get bored of them. Then on top of this, there are different factions, so every game always has 2 factions fighting, so Russians against the US Marines, or insurgents against the Canadians and etc. Each faction has different weapons, vehicles and uniforms. So when I say that Squad is simple in general gameplay, but still very complicated, then trust me, because for my first 500 hours, I was still learning a lot about Squad. And then lastly, there are a few more other things that we have to discuss. So first of all, you can mod in Squad, which means that other players have created different factions that are not publicly released, like the French Legion, Turkish Army and etc. You can even mod and play the Star Wars. All you have to do to get access to this extra content is find a modded server and download the mods from the Steam mode section. These modded servers are not that popular, but in prime times, so usually at night and after work, you can find full servers to play the Star Wars mode, or the French Legion against the Turkish and much more. These mods are free to download and will work the same like the original Squad game. Just with these modes, the textures might change, you will get access to different weapons, and in Star Wars, the whole game will basically change. I myself am not personally into them, but I have seen popular streamers trying these different modes and having a lot of fun. So I just wanted to let you know that there is a lot more content that you can get for free. And then last but not least, to get used to the game, I recommend playing the training ground. This is a simple tutorial that Squad will put you through, and at least this way you can set up your keybinds so you don't have to do it in game. And again, if you want to learn how to drive or operate vehicles like tanks or helicopters, then the single player training ground is definitely worth your time. So now in my last and final conclusions. Squad is everything I expected and even more. Before playing this game, you really need to understand of what this game is and what it isn't. I've been always fascinated with war movies, and being able to experience just from my computer is really something else. But with that said, for all the fun and good things this game has to offer, I personally can't play Squad for more than 3 to 4 hours a day, as it can get repetitive and boring quite fast. And sometimes you may find yourself playing in a map where every single enemy is just sitting still in one position, and you just keep dying for no reason. As I've said, I put more than 1000 hours, so of course I will recommend for anyone interested in realistic FPS shooters to try this game out, but your mindset has to be right to enjoy the game. I personally found myself playing this game as a war simulator, and even though there are many ways that the enemy players can play and make you enjoy the game less, I always remind myself that real war is probably even 2 times worse. I imagine that when most people play video games, they want to enjoy their time, and if they're still camping, then in real life, I can imagine that real soldiers sit in just one position for hours upon hours. So instead, what I do in squad is try to outflank the campers, and being in a vehicle is another great way to focus more on positioning and strategy, rather than just to hunt for eliminations. So in a quick summary, Squad is definitely worth the 45 to 50 bucks. I've put more than hundreds of hours and I plan to play it even more. This game has even changed my mind about the modern day combat and how a real life battle would look like. I can understand that $50 may be expensive for some players, so be lookout for sales. And on top of this, I've heard that there are even communities that give out Squad for free for active duty soldiers, or basically like real life veterans. So if once in your life you've been in the military, then I recommend to look into this more. But I personally spent the full $50 and I would do it again, and that's about it. So with that said, I really do appreciate everyone for watching guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions, feedback or other good squad guides that you would like to see in the next video, then feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that, please click like, subscribe and enable that notification bell, so this way you could support the channel and you won't miss any more amazing content from me. With all this said, you have an amazing day and I will see you in my next video. So take it easy, peace.